Time for another edition of the World Edition, and a lot is going on in the world, including Trump and 18 of his allies being charged in the Georgia election meddling as the former president faces his fourth charges in things related to the election and all along those lines. So I'm sure that folks will have some interesting thoughts around that. I've got Lee Newton Rhodes and Sasha Starr with me, and we'll see whether others join as well. But it definitely should be some interesting conversation, including an ad that I saw here in North Carolina that I may bring about because it was definitely an ad that made an interesting contrast. And I'll talk about that in a second as well. But definitely other things are going on in the world as the Hawaii wildfire death toll rises as anger grows over the handling of that particular wildfire and all along those lines. So definitely folks are uh, up in arms about the way that the wildfire was handled and all in that kind of way. And a young environmentalist activists have prevailed in a first of its kind climate change trial in Montana. So that is something else that is going on in the world. And of course, people are paying attention to the hot weather. I know we're in the middle of a heat wave here in Durham, North Carolina, as is other parts of not just the United States, but the world as well. So that is something that is going on and that people will be paying attention to as well. And in the world news that I am seeing, at least 35 died in an inferno at a petrol station in Dagestan, southern Russia. So that is something that is going on there in Russia, in addition to the war with Ukraine. So that is something that is going on and all along those lines. So definitely folks will be paying attention to that as well. And of course, there are other global things that are taking place as well. As a matter of fact, US, Japan, and South Korea have announced deeper defense cooperation at a Camp David summit. So they've gotten together and are seeing that maybe as a window of opportunity in Asia and all in that space. And Sasha may be interested to hear this. The Russian ruble is now worth less than a penny, which is infuriating some of Vladimir Putin's inner circle. And apparently, they are saying that they're laughing at us since that rate is so low. And the Russian central bank has jacked up the interest rate to 12% at an emergency meeting after the ruble had that particular plunge. And a wave of Russian airstrikes has hit western Ukraine, far from the front lines. So we do know that the battle is going to various parts of the Ukrainian nation as well. So that is something that we are seeing and that people will be interested in. Unfortunately, in a sad note, a young musical duo in Ukraine knew the risk of missiles but performed anyway, and they were killed in a Russian strike on Zubrsaski. And definitely that is something that I know a lot of the Ukrainians are thinking about, in addition to a lot of the other deaths that have been going on as well. Ukraine has says it stopped the air attack that was taking place on Odessa, while British and Dutch jets are going after Russian bombers. So there's a lot of things that are going on in that space. And Russia fired a warning shot and boarded a cargo ship in the Black Sea. So, like I said, that conflict is continuing, and I'm sure that Sasha will be talking about that as well, even on the Ukraine, Russia, China show that'll be coming our way at 11 o'clock as well. So, like I said, a number of things are happening around the world. I'll get to a couple of the other ones, then I'll bring up Sasha and Lee and see if Jatofi or anybody else joins us as well. By the way, it looks like the Argentine peso has plunged after folks that lean more to the right, who admired Trump, came first in the primary. So it looks like the Argentina far right candidate Javier Milei won the primary election, and he's copied Trump's playbook, is what some folks are saying, to become the country's biggest primary election vote getter. So there are some people that are saying there's even a middle class revolt going on there in Argentina. And it looks like there is Israel may uproot an ancient Christian mosaic near Armageddon, where it could definitely spark some outcries in that particular country as well. So, like I said, a number of things are happening around the world. As a matter of fact, Typhoon Lan hit western Japan, prompting evacuation warnings for 237,000 people. So that is something that is going on in the world as well. And it looks like they are saying that the Taliban rule over there in Afghanistan has definitely had an impact on the rights of women in that particular country as well. So folks may have some thoughts around that as well. And India's Modi, I know we talk about him sometimes quite often, it says peace is returning to the strife torn Manipur. So that is something also that is going on in the world. I gave up one little uh, other news item that was just of those human interest types, and then I'll bring up, like I said, Lee and Sasha, because I know the big story is those indictments, and a lot of folks are trying to figure out what this means. I know that there are some folks that are thinking that this could mean the well, Trump himself is saying that if these indictments keep coming up, that it might guarantee his victory, and all along those lines. I don't know that I necessarily buy that argument, but that is one that he has presented. But I'm definitely curious to see what Lee and Sasha have to say about that. As far as sad news, 4 Australians are missing in Indonesia after their 30th birthday trip were recently found alive, so that's good news and everything. So they were found alive, floating out there in the ocean. So it's good to know that after folks have been trying to figure out what was going on, that they were rescued after having been missing in waters off of Indonesia for 2 days. So 4 Australians and 2 Indonesians were definitely rescued in that particular incident and all along those lines. So definitely that is some more news that we are seeing in the world. But like I said, I'm going to bring up my esteemed fellow panelists and all along those lines. As a matter of fact, I'm ready to do that now. We're trying to find the one other article that I was finding, which is actually very interesting because you would think there would be tighter security at some of the national monuments, but two, and not just here in the US, but around the world, but 2 US tourists were found sleeping in Paris's Eiffel Tower after hopping the barriers that were there. So they were found drunk and sleeping atop the Eiffel Tower. So I didn't even know that you could get atop the Eiffel Tower in that kind of way, but apparently you can, and all along those lines. So like I said, I'm going to bring up Sasha as well as Lee, and I do have Jacoby with me also, and all in that space. I know the big topic around the U.S. is these indictments, and I did hear recently somebody and a part of the Trump camp that were saying, if these indictments keep coming down, that it might infuriate his base enough that they would all vote for him. And even though I know, Sasha, you talk about the 30%, but if it's 30 and 30 and there are other folks that are split, it could lead to a victory, and all in that space. Hoping not, but it could lead to that, and all in that kind of way. But I just wanted your take about these indictments, because there's a whole bunch of them and a whole bunch of co-conspirators that were put on these RICO charges by the grand jury there in Georgia. So Donald Trump was indicted, as well as 18 of his allies. So is this the beginning of the end of his campaign, or not? Because like I said, he's probably about 40 or 45% ahead of his nearest competitors, which are like DeSantis and I think Vivek, who may be in second place, the Indian entrepreneur. But do you think one of them is going to catch him, or is this the beginning of the end?
Well, I would like to say that polarization of opinion of Americans is really alarming. And if, let's say, 30%, for example, believe that the Earth is flat, that's fine. So they believe that the Earth is flat. How can it affect everyday's life of America? It can't. So it's maybe flat, maybe it's not flat. It's a very mute question. However, when 30% of Americans believe that election was stolen, that Trump is a victim of the Democratic plots and so on, and now when finally he was charged with racketeering, that makes with 91 charges altogether, that makes Trump probably the most dangerous American there is alive. I don't see anybody more dangerous than him. And yet the same 30% believes that this is a plot of Democrats, this is not real, this is fake charges or so on. I'm wondering, though, how Trump people saying that he's getting just more popular and so on. He's getting more votes. Let's talk about this. Okay, so he narrowly won 2016 election. Okay, then although he lost popular vote, but he won it but through electoral college. Now in 2000 to 2020, he lost popular vote by really huge margin, much bigger than in 2016. And he lost also, in spite of all the Trump is saying that this was a conspiracy to fake election, the stolen election, and all this stuff. He still lost the electoral college. So people would believe, so he's dropping from 2016 down to 2020. And now, after being charged with 91 counts, criminal offenses, for some reason he will start gaining the votes. That's against all logic, absolutely, because, okay, his base, 30% will stay with him, granted. Now, where he gonna get votes? Democrats are not going to vote for him. And independents, they will probably abstain from voting. But they're not going to vote for man charges 21 criminal charges, including racketeering. No, I don't believe it. I mean, okay, some people tells me is that, well, you don't know, the Americans are really crazy people and so on, but not that crazy. I don't believe that. Okay, guys.
What's your take on this, Jacoby and Lee? Like I said, do you think that this is going to be something that will cause the campaign to cease and end, and maybe even cause him to lose a sizable lead that he has? Or is this much ado about nothing, as the Shakespeare lines used to be and everything? But what is y'all's take on the impact of this?
Jacoby or me?
Either one.
Jacoby, you can go first, then I'll clean up.
Oh, Lee, you take it away. Yeah, I'll follow you this time.
Okay, not a problem. Mark, I put a link there at 26 seconds. That's Schumer making that comment years ago. But besides that, his supporters don't really care what the government is accusing him of. Because first of all, it's what they're accusing him of. To Sasha's point, he's not been convicted, which is a fair point. They can accuse a ham sandwich if they want, as the famous expression. Second of all, it's not so much him as a person, it's what he represents. It's his anti-establishment. There are those people who voted for Trump who held their nose, but you know what? The alternative was what he's done in terms of exposing the corruption in the media, the corruption in the deep state, what have you. A lot of people are very grateful for, even though they may not like him as a person or want him, but what's the alternative? If you look at his rallies now, he's getting tens of thousands of people showing up at rallies. Biden can't even get a dozen. DeSantis is struggling. He just fired, his campaign manager, what have you. And I don't know that there's anything stopping at least Trump from getting the nomination. I don't know about the general election, but the nomination itself, the Republican Party is Trump.
You may have a point there and everything. What's your take on it, Jacoby? Do you think that this is a done deal with the Trump side going to win with his sizable lead? Like I said, it's somewhere between 40 and 45% and all along those lines, but these indictments do keep coming down the pike. So is this going to erode his support in any direction? Or what?
Jacoby, before you answer the question, I just want to add one more thing. I apologize.
No problem.
It's, people can say, there appears to be a double standard in the way Trump is being treated versus those people in 2016 who questioned the election and a lot of other different things. And you can say whataboutism, but at a certain point in time, people are sick and tired of the blatant double standard. Jacoby, to you.
I mean, I'll have to disagree with Lee a lot on the double standard, because there isn't a blatant double standard.
Stacey Abrams still insists that she won the election.
Who?
Stacey Abrams from Georgia.
Everybody but Trump conceded their election.
Stacey Abrams, I'm saying, never conceded. She said she won. It was stolen from her.
everybody but Trump has a
You're missing my point then. You're missing my point. My point was
I get your point, but you're not listening to what I'm trying to tell you. When everybody concedes and passes the torch, except for one individual, then one individual is still fighting, saying their election was
I get that. That wasn't my point. My point was, why are we crucifying Trump for saying that, but not Stacey Abrams?
Did Stacey Abrams concede and give a concession? Yes.
As far as I know, she did not. But if she did, when was it, and when was the election?
It was after her election. She did.
How much? How much? How many years?
It was
It
after.
was a long time.
No, it wasn't. Lee.
I think she conceded immediately after the election. Now, she might have thought
I don't believe
there
so.
was irregularities and everything.
There's
Thank you,
a
Mark.
concession speech from Hillary Clinton. There's a concession.
There was
speech
one. That's correct.
from Gore. There's a concession on documented from Stacey Abrams. That's what I'm saying. Everybody has conceded except for Trump.
Is there any requirement to concede? I'm just asking the question. I'm putting this out there. Is there a requirement?
But now, wait. Now you're moving the goalposts.
You're right. I am. You're right. In all fairness, I am. I'm asking. I'm just putting that question out there.
And you ask the question first, why is Trump being crucified for not conceding, but Stacey Abrams?
My understanding was she did not concede, and you're saying you're correcting me for the record.
Yes, she did. So Trump never conceded, and he's actually campaigning on not conceding and campaigning on vengeance and attacking and going afterwards. So that is a problem. And so when we talk about how there's a double standard and there's nobody, people are being treated unfairly, all that coming from one individual. And he has permeated that throughout the whole GOP. And the whole GOP is backing his claim. So,
Jacoby?
Yes.
Mark, I just Googled Stacey Abrams conceding, and the first thing that showed up was PBS. And it says that Stacey Abrams concedes Georgia gubernatorial race to Brian Kemp. This is dated November 8th, 2022. That's 4 years after her 2018 race. I'm just putting that out there for a record. It took her 4 years.
Lee,
according to PBS.
Currently, again, what point does that change when I say everybody has conceded?
10 years out, Trump may concede. Then you're going to be what? What's your point? Your point was she conceded right away. That's not accurate.
Lee.
Excuse me, guys. You're talking about concession. We are talking with Trump of organizing a coup, organizing to take over the power, to remain president while he lost presidency, and he knew that, and yet he was trying to excite people to fight for him, and so on. This is compared when you're talking about Stacey Abrams. This is garbage. Come on, Lee. You have to know better.
The point was Stacey Abrams took her 4 years to concede. Go on, Jacoby.
Okay, somebody got parking. So what? Oh, he's a criminal.
Trump is literally trying to campaign on not conceding. He's campaigning that the election was stolen. He's campaigning that these people are attacking me and using the government to come after me. Did Stacey Abrams do any of that?
As far as I know, she did not. But what's your point?
No, Lee. Don't give me a but. Don't give me a but.
No, I agree with you. I said, as far as I know, she did not. What's your point? I just asked. I didn't put a but there. You put that in there.
My point exactly is the fact that Trump is literally doing these things that you're saying, well, he should not be crucified for doing.
No, well, all I'm saying is he wasn't the only one who's ever questioned an election. Hillary did that. Stacey Abrams did that. A lot of people have done that.
There's a difference, though. Questioning the election and putting in fake electors to steal the election is different.
Jacoby, there were states in 2016 that tried to pull the electors that voted for Trump. I could show you the clip if Mark wants to play it.
Lee, no, Lee. Trump and his group literally, and it is on
I can show you on Congress where congressmen wanted to poll electors for Trump, if that's what you want to go there.
Lee, you're stating that Obama took electors, and
I didn't say Obama. You put his name in there. I'm just saying that they're congressmen.
Lee, what's your point? Okay,
Lee,
give us. We
electors?
cannot follow you. Give us point. Oh, Trump is great. He's innocent. He's one of the greatest.
No, Sasha, that's not my point. My only point was.
What is your point, Lee?
My point was some of these things that Trump is being accused of, and that he did. He is not the ones who started, who's done them the first time in our history.
No, I'm not taking that.
Lee,
it's all baloney.
Trump took electors to replace other electors so that he could stay president. I don't care about anybody else. Trump took electors to put in to replace other electors in a scheme so he would stay president. When you're saying that other electors were involved or blah, 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 Trump took electors. He took a personal stake in trying to make him stay president. That's the whole difference in this whole thing. He did that. That's one. He then tried to his whole scheme of knowing that he lost the election, repeated claims that he did.
Wait. You just said something I don't think is accurate. In fairness, you saying no that he lost the election. He may, in his mind, and a lot of people do believe that a lot of shenanigans did go on in that election. And I can give you something that you'll even agree to. Election laws were changed unconstitutionally because the legislatures are the ones who changed election laws, not the governor, not the AG, no one else. And a lot of election laws were changed during COVID, not the way they should have been done. That in and of itself shows that things were not done in a way they should, in a proper way. Whether that led to fraud or not, that's a separate issue.
Here's a question that'll help with this. Are mail-in ballots secure?
Absolutely not.
So you're telling me the state of Utah, who does mail-in ballots for the past elections, and actually the 26 states, well, at least 26 states that do mail-in ballots, they have unsecure elections.
I believe it was Jimmy Carter, and then definitely New York Times. I can give you the link if you want. Came out about 10 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, the date, how unreliable mail-in ballots are.
So then why do the 26 states that have mail-in ballot elections?
You got me. I have no idea. I think it should be in person.
And then on top of that, where is the proof that these mail-in ballots are unsecure? Because there has been no proof.
Are you even reading the news about what's going on in Michigan? The lawsuits in Michigan?
I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the 80,000 registrations.
No, I'm not talking about that.
What are you talking about then?
You're telling me that mail-in ballots are just as secure as in person? I'm asking you the question. Okay. Mail-in ballots and in person are just as secure as each other.
Yes.
There's no advantage. Huh? That's what you're saying on the record?
Yes.
Then let's just get rid of in-person elections now.
That's your Michigan thing. What are you talking about in Michigan?
There were ballots that were dumped. There were ballots that were counted, absentee ballots that were counted sequentially that were dumped.
Wait. The Michigan case. Let's get back to the Michigan case.
Let me do the link so I don't misstate it.
Because from what I read, the Michigan case was about registrations. Registrations don't count.
I had nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with registrations.
Just really quickly, and that's what I was going to get to, and everything, getting off of Michigan for a while. We can get to Michigan later and everything. But one of the things that I saw yesterday that caught me a little bit off guard, but I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts about it, is we're in the middle of campaign season, and some of these campaign ads can be quite interesting and everything, because I saw one that was on yesterday that was a it was around school choice, and definitely there are people that would love school choice. I think you've talked about it. I've even said that there are aspects of school choice that I am in favor of as well. But I think most people in the state of North Carolina, I'm just using North Carolina as an example, would say that our current governor is somewhere between liberal to moderate and everything. But if you hear the latest commercial about they're revolving around that, they do a contrast between Governor Cooper and George Wallace because of the segregation laws and all in that space. So they try to make it out to seem that Governor Cooper's stance on school choice makes him the same as a segregationist George Wallace and all along those lines. So I'm wondering, are we going to see a lot of these type of negative advertising, and does that type of advertising work and everything? I see we've also got Shaquille with us as well, so I'm going to bring him up also. But what is your take on that? Because like I said, I was literally watching what I do sometimes in the evening after doing this whole pod TV and some of my other jobs, some of the cop shows and all along those lines, and it popped up on the late night and everything. But like I said, it caught me it took me aback, just a comparison and everything, because I was going like, that just doesn't seem like a fair comparison and all. But I was just wondering y'all's take on those kind of ads. I was actually trying to pull it up, and I did not find a YouTube link as of yet, but it was an interesting contrast. So anybody have a take on this kind of negative advertising as to whether it is effective?
It's very effective. That's why a lot of these ads are negative, and people market and push out of fear. The whole, hey, I'm scared of this person is the worst person since whatever. Actually, Shaq brought up yesterday, one of the big things, Biden has, had a good economic run or a decent economic run, but he hasn't seen many ads towards the economic run. There's been more ads towards, hey, we don't want Trump again, or we don't want this again. So negative ads work.
Any thought, Shaquille or Lee? Because like I said, it's just
Well,
coming up.
Just to tie into the last conversation, I think Jacoby and Sasha, I understand. I think the audience understands that you guys have a negative view towards Donald Trump. There's nothing wrong with that. But the original question that Mark had asked was about voters. And you may think quite emphatically that, Trump's not conducted himself very well. But the bottom line is, what do voters think? And I think the poll numbers would indicate that voters are not as anti-Trump as perhaps some people would like them to be. In relation to the economy, I think Biden's in a bit of a difficult position. One, the messaging from this administration hasn't been great. But two, although you've seen an increase in the GDP of the United States by $7 trillion, you've gone from a $20 trillion or a $21 trillion economy to a $27 trillion economy. That's a pretty big increase. It's certainly a bigger increase in inflation over that period of time. But the effects of that are disproportionate. There is parts of the community that benefit from that enormously. The international community, people like myself who invest in US markets, people like Sasha who invest in US markets, have had fantastic returns on our portfolios. However, does that help the middle-class worker who's trying to pay off a home? Does that help people that are perhaps living in rural America where their pay packets are a little bit lower? That's where the issues are going to be. And I think that Biden's going to have a difficult time if Biden and the Democrats only talk about, well, Trump's a horrible person, don't put him back in power. And certainly the same sort of surprise that people are saying he just can't possibly be elected again, I wouldn't take that as a given, because that's what everybody thought, including myself, in 2016. I could not have imagined any circumstance in the lead up to the 2016 election that Donald Trump would win. There was just no conceivable way in my mind at that time that he was going to win this election. But he did.
Shaquille, I would like to correct you on one thing. I did address how voting reflected on this Trump's latest charges. What I said is that there was a very narrow victory of Trump through Electoral College in 2016. Then in 2020, he lost much more popular votes, and he lost Electoral College as well. So his support is dwindling down even before all these indictments and all the latest criminal charges and so on. So I can't see, I fail to see how he will get many more new votes. Okay, his base, 30%, it's his regardless. Bring more charges, charge him twice a day from now on. Doesn't matter. The 30% of the idiots will be always with him. However, he needs, okay, Democrats will not touch him. That's understandable. But he needs now some of those independent voters. And based on this latest information, what kind of dangerous man he is. I'm not going to call him criminal because he hasn't been indicted. He hasn't been found guilty yet. So he is not criminal. It says me, Sasha Star. But he is the most dangerous American there is alive. He's much more dangerous than someone who killed two, three people.
But again, Sasha, that's your opinion, and that's not
So-
necessarily the opinion of
No,
the
it's
voters.
not my opinion. Who else is there in the United States now with 91 criminal charges against? Show me the man. Show me his name.
Sasha, hold on real quick. Shaq, let me jump in real fast.
Hang on, Jamie. Just wait 1 second. It's worth noting the popular vote's the popular vote. That's not the election system the United States has. Neither is it the election system that
You
Canada,
got it.
the UK, Australia, New Zealand. Nobody has the popular vote system. So ignore that for a moment. This election came down to something like 40,000 votes across Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Okay, and you can throw Georgia in there if you want to. There was like 14,000 votes there. So we're not talking about particularly big margins that got Biden across the line in the 2020 election. So the question's going to be, is there going to be the same enthusiasm and the same voter turnout from the Democrats? And also Democrats are saying at the moment that Republicans across the country have tried to make it more difficult for people to vote in the first place. So there is a very good chance that Democrats are not going to have that same turnout 2024 if it's a Biden-Harris a ticket again. And if there is not that sort of turnout, it's very easy to see how Donald Trump could just get over the line just with 40 or 50,000 votes across 3 or 4 states.
So
On the same lines, I think you're going to make a point to Toby, but one thing that I was going to say is that I think that that's part of the reason that Vice President Harris came out recently and said what you just said, which Shaquille, which is that they have to make sure that they get the voter push out there and that they get that voter push out there similar, if not stronger, than they did the last election. And she did raise some concerns about that there is some apathy among some of the Democratic voters, and she even raised that concern herself. And I think that was like maybe 3 or 4 days ago that I saw an article when she had put that out there, that she was having those concerns herself as well.
Even after the record turnout in the last election?
Even with the record turnout, she's definitely, I think it was like the Friday or Thursday that she came out very adamantly that they needed to be sure to reach their base and to make sure that the base came out. She also raised some of the concerns that Shaquille talked about around the voter irregularities and the repression of voter rights and everything. So she did raise those as well.
I mean, that is spot on, because I mean, he has an opportunity to become president again, which is sad, because what's baked in the cake last time is still baked in the cake now. And people that are following him, Sasha, they already see that. They think that he's a victim. But how far, and to Shaquille's point, I mean, the independents may see him as a sympathetic figure now because of everything going on. And that's going to rile the base. And people are going to come out for Trump because people have already started saying, "Hey, it's a civil war. I'm gonna get me some gear and stand in front of." These people are going to come out, and it's true. Will the Democrats come out? Will the?
I just got to ask you this question: your accent just now and the words that you choose, are you saying it's only rednecks who support him?
No, I'm not.
You use that term you talk like that for a reason, I assume.
No, I mean, people have said
Give me some gear.
From rednecks to suburban women have said this is a civil war to them, because that's the term that they've used.
Those are the only people who are supporting Trump? No college educated coastal people, maybe people of color?
Anybody who is in that camp for Trump right now, and they range from, there are even
There's even a black contingent there. There's Hispanic individuals. I'm not saying hillbillies, whatever. I don't know.
It sounded like you were. It sounded like you were.
No,
You know,
I'm
I
not
think-
saying that at
I think
all. I'm saying
the-
that
the
there is
comeback
going
to
to
the
be an
core
active
message, though.
community that's coming out for him and using the term or the terms that they have said on video, on camera, saying, yes, we are going to come out and support him. It's like a civil war to them. That is a
But
mindset that some of them
the
have.
core part of that is the anti-establishment side of Donald Trump.
Oh,
So,
yes.
so that's where, let's take, for example, the, temporary or transitory inflation. Okay. Now, look, I understand what she meant when she said that. I understand why it was said that way. I get it, what they were trying to say. But most people, and I'm not saying that most people are dumb, most people just they're not into economics. They might have other interests and other careers. Okay. So most people aren't going to sit there and try to learn what's going on. And, what people will have the tendency to do, and I'll put my own, I'll put my hand up for this as well, is they tend to look at things that are difficult for them to achieve and they blame government for it, right? I do that all the time. You've heard me say many times I left Australia because I couldn't do what I wanted to do in this country. And so I went to countries that had easier regulations for me to do the specific types of investment ideas that I had. And I was very successful when I went overseas. So I'm very angry at the government. Now, I don't care who's in government. I don't care whether it's the Australian Conservative Party or the Australian Centre-Left Party. I'm really unhappy with them. That's, I think, the way that a lot of people feel, and especially when a lot of people feel by watching the news, hey, I don't have any say in what's going to happen in my child's education. I don't have any say in whether or not I can have a gas cook stove, a cooker or a stove in my apartment in New York. I don't have any say in what sort of vehicle I'm going to have. The government's trying to force me to make all these decisions I don't want to make. Okay, I have to use pronouns and I don't want to use them. All these things that have changed, that have been in flux recently, I think people have a tendency to blame government. And Trump is that anti-establishment figure. So he becomes a hero. And the more that he is indicted, the more that government goes after him, the more it plays straight into his hands. And he did a very good job of this in the 2016 election by showing all these celebrities. The more celebrities came out to endorse Hillary Clinton, the better it looked for Donald Trump, because he could say, well, look, I don't have Beyonce singing at my concerts. And I think, was it there Clint Eastwood or something came up and spoke to an empty chair and said, where is Obama, in one of the rallies. So, that was that he had one or two supporters, but he didn't really get that celebrity group. And I think that disconnect between people is what plays into Trump's hands. And I think it's very dangerous. I'm not saying I support Trump. I'm just saying that I think it's very dangerous to ignore the motivations that people might have to vote for him.
Oh, I
completely
completely agree there, because honestly, Trump knows how to push those buttons and play that game. And because he's come out of that media age or that media field, and that's where his intelligence is. And yeah, if the Democrat Party falls behind and doesn't listen to the same problem that we ran into before, 2016 will happen over again. So yeah, I mean,
Toby, along those same lines, just really quickly, do you ever think sometimes that if a incident happens that is opposite of what the usual narrative is, that it can change the narrative? And I'm getting ready to ask why I'm bringing this up and everything, but there was a incident that took place in Texas, because we know that with Black Lives Matter, there was a lot of conversations around the importance of body cams and all along those lines. But a Texas representative, Ronnie Jackson, was taken to the ground by cops doing a brief detainment. He even said that he was going to reach out to Governor Abbott in that particular state and everything. And I'm wondering if, because he is not the stereotypical victim that people sometimes put out there of what is going on with the relationship between cops and citizens, that it may change the narrative and may get people to look closer at officers in general. And I've definitely got friends, as I said before on the show, that are in law enforcement, even have relatives that are in law enforcement. I'm wondering if, because it is not the stereotypical Black or Hispanic victim of what is going on if this won't change the narrative to some degree, because of this incident literally happening at a rodeo. You can't get more all-American than a rodeo and all in that space. And then apparently he was trying to come to the aid of a young lady who was suffering from a seizure and all along those lines. But I'm just wondering if it's going to change the narrative, since the body cams is what caught what's going on as he was berating the officers after being wrestled to the ground.
I mean, I guess it's not going to change the narrative unless more of it happens or more of it's publicly put out there. If you take a look at the history of all the movements and everything, you can, if you go into even child abduction, if you look at how people get concerned over child abduction, and again, hate to point this out, but this is the way this is the way our society works in the U.S. If it's a young Black child, we're not looking for that child as much as we're looking for that young white child. It's sad to say that, but it happens. If it were to happen, if these police officers, if we start seeing more to where these officers are beating on, the same white individuals, then yes, there'll be a lot more outrage because of that. The larger population is the Caucasian population. That's just a fact in the U.S. And the way our history has been all over, regardless what it is, yes. I mean, it's just it's a reality.
Yeah. How much is the media to blame for showing the bad side and not the good side? Whether it's cops, whether it's citizens, or whenever it is. Because it happens on both sides.
The media is partially to blame, but it's also they've done studies, and it's a sad reality, but it's our reality, and it's ingrained within us. The light side is always the good side. The dark side is always the bad side.
I'm sorry, what's ingrained within who?
Us, ourselves. There was a study done where people were, where kids had to choose which was the good guy and which was the bad guy. The majority of the time, the kid chose the darker skinned individual as the bad person.
Yeah, but
even the darker skinned kids?
If the majority of people are white, if the majority of kids are white, okay, especially if they're living in white areas, that may be what they're going to do. If you go to India and do the same study, they may well pick the white person as being the most likely to be the bad person.
We're talking about it.
But hold on a second, Toby and Shaquille. The flip side of that, and is a famous study, is the doll study. I think I brought it up on this show before, where literally they asked African American young children of what their version of beauty was, and all along those lines. And the vast majority of them picked, because of the nature of society, the white Barbie figure as the one that was pretty or the more appealing and all of that, even though that was contrary to their own background and their own history.
Well, look, the US has got a serious issue with this. And one of the issues, I've brought this up on previous shows, is the amount of children that age out of the foster care or the adoption system. And these kids, they go into adulthood with really no community around them. There's a very, very high rate of drug and alcohol abuse. There's a very, very high rate of crimes. And the reality is that if you're a young Black person in the United States, the chances of you being adopted by a forever family is significantly lower than that of a white child, or actually a number of other ethnicities. So, look, that is a sad reflection of the US. It's also a sad reflection that you've got 9 out of 10 youths that have been sentenced to life without the possibility of parole are Black. There are clearly disparities that need to be addressed. But how they're going to be addressed, I don't know, because the conversation is never about how you're going to fix these problems. It's about, well, let's defund the police.
No, I think I have to push back just a tad bit. There are tons of discussions about how do we address this. There are tons of ways and options that people put out there.
But
That's
just
not,
as we're
that's
talking
not
about
the leading,
how,
they're not
just
the
as
leading
we're talking
stories.
about how the media plays
No,
into
I
That's
agree
what
they're not the
I'm
leading stories
referring
on
to.
media, but hold on a second,
I'm
Shaquille,
referring,
and
into the
hold on a
trap
second,
that
Shaquille
I'm
and Toby. The
referring
flip side of
to,
that, and it's a point that I want to make to the
wait,
same point that you're
Mark,
making
Toby,
and everything is
I'm
that
referring to the media. There's no
no, and
real.
I was going to
These
bring
are not
something
the
about the
leading
media as
stories.
well, Shaquille,
These are
because
not
one
the
of the
leading.
things that
Hang on,
exists is
Mark.
what
These
is
are
the
not the
face
leading
of what
stories.
is to the public? What is the face of welfare? I'm asking all of y'all. What is most people that perceive as the face of welfare?
These are not the leading stories that the media is.
No, but I know, but I'm saying that's
Okay,
not the leading story. But
I'm
what
still
is
going to finish
perceived
my
as the
sentence.
leading face of welfare? If you ask the average person, what is the person that is mostly on welfare? What is their answer going to be in y'all's opinion? I'm asking the question.
Okay.
In terms of numbers, it's whites, obviously.
I'm still going to answer the thing. So these are not the leading stories in media, but to Lee's point, right? What's the media? You know, they say, well, you know, the media is always going out telling the bad stories. But what's the media going to do? The media is not going to sit there and say, look, guess what happened today? Today, the police didn't shoot anybody. You know, today the police interacted with 400 people and gave them a speeding ticket, and nothing bad happened. Like that's just not. I mean, who's going to watch that? You're going to sit there and go, "Why are you telling me?" Generally speaking, the media only wants to have those bad, negative stories, and that's why that's what you say.
So
Yeah, I mean,
I have to
there's
also
something
disagree with
that
that a little
Kim
bit
brings
as
up all the
well.
time, which is a very true statement, and I can say that as a member of the press. But yes, there are a lot of press people that go by the notion of it bleeds, it leads, which means that is the
Yeah.
stories that usually are the lead stories and everything in just about any city. I don't care whether you're
And
in
then
Australia or England
Well, I
or
mean, those
anywhere in
those
the
feel
U.S.
good,
the
those
reason
feel
I
good
have to
stories
disagree
that the
also,
tigers in the zoo gave birth to some, you know, some little kittens or whatever baby tigers are called, right? Those little stories like that. There's a 30-second story at the end of the news cycle when everyone's tuning out. Why? Because people are interested.
well, and that isn't always, and that leads to it's not just the media's fault, it is our fault as well. Because think about it. The media is in a business of making money as just as anybody else is. And how do they make money? By views. And if they can't get the views, then they can't make money.
Daddy.
What do people watch? People don't watch that panda that just had 2 cubs. People watch that, hey, this bad thing happened. So it is.
Well, that's even in entertainment, right? How many people really? Let's just talk about men for a moment, right? How many people go and watch a romantic comedy, right? Sasha Starr only ever goes and sees it when his wife or daughter makes him go and see a romantic comedy, right? Otherwise, you're going to go watch, you know, an action film. You're going to go watch, you know, Squid Games. You're going to go watch all this other stuff. You know, even when we look at kids' movies, right? Like Finding Nemo was probably one of the last kids' movies I watched, right? There's all this stuff that happens, right? It's not just some easy, wonderful, you know, then the shark has to overcome his addiction to fish and all this stuff. Like, there's all this stuff that actually happens. You can't just have this film where, you know, nothing really happens and everyone's just floating around.
No, I agree with you, Shaquille, but that comes back to the
I have to disagree there.
that comes
as well,
back to the
because
original point that I was
look
making,
at-
even about the whole notion of the welfare image. Because if you listen to the media, and I hear what you said, and you are actually correct, because it's mostly white women that are on the roles of welfare. But if you watch the news coverage, you would think that it is mostly black women in the project area. And I'm not saying that there aren't black women in the project area that aren't on welfare and aren't even abusing welfare in some cases. But if you watch the media, you would believe that is the majority, and that is far from the case.
And so 2 things real quick. The magic and the beauty of the Barbie movie was the pushback for what actually, Shaq, you're talking about, is because we as men forget that women are consumers as well. And it's not all the action that we want all the time, because Barbie wasn't full of all this action. Barbie was actually a different style movie, which is actually that could be the way movies are going and could lead us.
It's not going to be the way. It's not going to be the way that movies are going at all, right? Look. If Barbie is popular, Joker was even more popular, right? Joker took what, 1.2 billion at the box office.
Well, Barbie has broken that record.
Okay, well, Joker was similarly popular. Okay, So the idea that just because one thing's popular, that's what everyone's going to go and see. I don't think so. I don't think you're going to see Sasha Starr go and see
No.
Barbie. I just can't
You might
imagine.
not see Sasha
I don't-
see it, but
It's not
would
always
you
one place,
agree
Sasha.
that we might see
And
Not
once
everybody
copycat?
wants
Hold on a
to
second. Would you
Joker.
agree that we might see copycat movies? Because one thing that happened after Black Panther and after a number of others was that there were copycat kind of movies, some that were successful, some that weren't as successful. So I literally could see. I'm not a fan. Never had a Barbie in my life. Never planning to have a Barbie in my life. But I could see literally Josie and the Pussycat being another movie because it's similar in some ways to Barbie or the other kind of movies that have a strong female lead cartoon character coming out as new movies because of the success of Barbie and having some friends in that industry, in the Hollywood industry, that they might go, hey, look, that made a bunch of money, so we're going to see what else is out there in that genre and that style that we can copy and everything.
Mark,
Not even
aren't you
female leads, but also
surprised that in
that
US so many people love Barbie and so many people favor Trump as the president of the United States? I see there's a lot of similarity between two of them.
But to touch on Mark, when you're talking about the welfare issue, yes, welfare, the black woman being or black people being welfare recipients or the major recipients of welfare, that's all back to that harkens back to how it gets marketed politically and how politics, poor people are always black in politics. They're taking our money, and that came out of the Southern strategy and how we can try and attack these individuals. That's all that came from.
So are you suggesting then, Jacoby, that if poor people are not black, then there really isn't a problem? If the majority of poor people are white, then there really isn't the systemic racism there that you keep telling me about by that analogy.
No. That's
Well, please,
not even
please,
close
please,
to what I said.
Well, please expand on that. If black people are not the greatest proportion of poor people in the United States, then why exactly is everyone telling me that black people in America are systematically disadvantaged?
All right. So that is different from what I was actually talking about. But to help you understand this portion, and because you want me to expound on it. So black people are paid 70% less than white people for the same position.
For the same position?
Yeah.
Not different professions, not different majors in college, not education versus doctor.
No.
This doesn't happen. It's just not true.
I don't see that happening.
Statistics here, they don't show
Loans.
out
Black
what you're
people
saying
receive less
in
in
exactly the
loans.
same way
than
as
black
when
people.
people say
White
this about women.
I mean, there are things that go on
Let me
that
say
I've brought
this.
up before around banking,
Let me
and there
finish my
are
sentence,
pay
Mark.
gap.
Mark,
There are
let me
pay
finish my sentence.
differences, and we
Let me
could
finish
have
my
a whole
sentence.
show around this as well,
Let-
because there
let
are
me finish my
definitely
sentence.
pay differences. I mean, I can bring in Sandy Darity and others
Let
that
me
are
finish my sentence.
economic folks like yourself, Shaquille, that can literally point out figures, because Sandy is a person that I've known for years who studies economic disparity at Duke University. I've actually had the pleasure of having him on some of my shows and everything. So we can definitely bring, hopefully, him into a
Okay,
show
thank you
that
for
he
that.
can.
Now let me finish my sentence.
In
Now here's what happens.
No, Shaq, this
If
answers
you've-
the question.
if
In
you've- Can I finish my
2019,
sentence?
the typical median black worker earned 24.4% less an hour than a typical white worker. This is an even larger wage gap than 1979.
Toby, the devil is in the details. You ought to get to the details.
Can I
dear
finish my
God.
sentence? Is there any chance of that?
Dear God.
It's
Shaquille,
exactly
hold on a second. Let's let
Honey,
Shaquille
that's
speak.
For it.
Shaquille, speak your mind.
This is exactly the same sort of funny mathematics and selective use of statistics that is used when people say that women are underpaid compared to men. Now, there are some cases where that is true, especially where pay packets are commensurate with the actual earnings or revenue that that employee has, such as sports stars, executive salary, the actors, things like that. That can be true. But as a whole, the idea that two people working for the same employer at McDonald's, for example, one person's going to get 25% less,
And this
is
is
simply
why
not
your
true.
statistics
And you
are
actually changed the goalpost when you read
Nope.
those statistics, because you
Incorrect.
started off saying when Lee asked you,
Shaq,
when Lee
here's
asked-
the problem. You said take two people. That's not taking statistics. These
Can I
individuals, the
finish?
Economic Policy Institute,
can I
let's
finish?
try this. You
No,
bring up
let's
your
try letting me
polls
finish.
and posts that you
How
have done.
about we
Don't
try?
give me
How about
one
we
and
try
two
letting me
people.
finish? How about we try letting me finish?
Go ahead.
Is that okay?
Go. We're actually winding down. I was
Lee-
going to
Lee
bring up a
asked the
celebrity in a
question.
minute as well.
Lee
But go
asked
ahead,
the
wrap up.
Lee
No,
asked the question.
I'm telling you. Go ahead, Shaquille. We still got time.
Lee asked the question about whether two people in the same job are going to be paid differently. Okay. And Jatova, you said yes, people in the same jobs are paid differently. Then, when you wanted to prove that point, you brought up a statistic which talked about median income.
From the
Okay.
Economic
Now, there is
Policy
no question.
Institute.
There's no question that Black Americans are disadvantaged when it comes to their earning capacity over their lifetimes. There's no question about that. But the idea that employers are underpaying black staff compared to white staff gravely misses the point. Where the issue
Not
actually
your words.
What?
Give me proof, not your words. I provided you proof.
Proof.
from
You didn't provide me
Economic
proof.
Policy
What is
Institute
median?
that has
What does
done a
median
study.
income mean?
You haven't done a study.
Jatovi, I'm not going to prove a negative. You just used
I
median income.
gave you
That's
proof.
everybody in that group's income divided by everybody in that group. That is not the same as a disparity between employees working for the same company in the same position, which is what Lee asked you.
I gave you proof. You sitting here saying that proof is not proof because it is not two people from McDonald's.
Lee, Jatovi.
Yeah, you messed it all up because you cannot get your words straight.
Third time lucky.
You have no proof.
Jatovi.
Well, like I said, we got to wrap up. Hold on a second.
Median
We're wrapping up
income
because
is
we got to get
everybody's
to
income
Sasha's
divided
show
by
and
the
continue
group.
this
That's
discussion.
what median income is. Why do you want to use that as proof that there
Black
are
workers
disparities
still
within
earn
the
less
same
than their white
industry or within the
counterparts.
same employer?
Study
Why
in
do you want to do that?
2020. Let's see. Just type it in. Wage gap between black and white. You can find
Well,
it.
yeah, because it's not like I
Google.
study economics for a living. No, I better type it in Google and listen to your interpretations.
You have provided nothing. But you said
provided
this
nothing.
person at McDonald's and
You
this person.
provided
Toby
nothing.
and
What you've
Shaquille,
just
like I said,
done
we
is
can
you've
continue
just
this.
used-
Hold on.
You've used
Hold on, we can
statistics
continue
to prove
this
a point
discussion
that
on.
those statistics don't prove.
No,
You
we can
haven't
continue
provided
discussion
anything
on
to change that.
tomorrow as well, because like I said, it's a lively discussion. Of the only thing I was going to bring up really quickly, and I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts, and we only got a few minutes. But speaking of folks that are sometimes seen as obsolete, for lack of a better term, but sometimes when an incident happens, it brings them back into the forefront. So rapper 50 Cent, folks that even forgot that he was out there, and everything has doubled down on the decline of quality of life in Los Angeles. So on Sunday, he wrote on Instagram, "I told you LA was finished. They're going to have to lock the doors. Appointment only. Shaking my head in a post
Maybe
accompanied
what
by
should
a
become
video footage of the flash mob, because apparently 50 Cent
Mark,
had
Mark,
earlier
Lee-
said
Lee's dropped the video.
that
Mark, Lee dropped a video into the chat window, and maybe America would be much better off if
It's only 90 seconds, Mark.
DEI managers became obsolete.
the clip. Hold on a second.
Yeah, it's 90 seconds long.
Okay, I got it.
It goes specifically to this issue.
The issue
Jatobia
I just
will
brought up
enjoy
with
it.
The comment and all along those lines. So definitely. And the other thing I was going to say is I bring up this video, and I try to bring up as quickly as possible. But I was also surprised, as I said earlier, that you can have access to the Eiffel Tower and everything. Because like I said, earlier we talked about the fact that we found some drunken Americans there and all in that space. So it'll be interesting to see what folks say, and we'll bring more conversation about this and other things in as we get ready to do Sasha's show very shortly as well. So I did get the video. We're going to have the video come up, but I didn't know if y'all had any other thoughts at all along those lines.
Take care, Stash.
Trying to bring it up, but somebody wants to cover it. I'll play your other video while we're waiting.
But he's taking these shots, this
Not the next
antagonism,
one.
taunting to the intelligence community.
You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, he's being really dumb to do this.
What do you think the intelligence community would do if they were motivated?
I don't know,
to?
but from what I am told, they are very upset with how he has treated them and talked about them.
Mark, I'm sorry, I apologize. The second one, the last one I just put in the YouTube. Joseph talks about pay gap. It's 90 seconds long. We got time for that.
can play it. So, like I said, that is the nature of media, particularly the media that we do here on
Have you got
StreamYard and everything. But I should only take a matter of a second or two to get it up because it's actually in the process. And then I've got to go over to Sasha's show as well. And
I've got it up. If you want to see my screen, I've got it up.
It's up now. Hold on a second. There we go.
No, I would agree with that. But you would also have to agree that, generally speaking, women are paid less, for example, for the same jobs as men.
No, I would not. I would not agree with that. If you're talking about women with the same number of years of experience, with the same continuous service, et cetera, then when I look at that, I don't find that disparity. I find, for example, in many cases, the women are making more, depending upon how you break the data down. The difference with women is between married women and everybody else. That's the real difference.
Well, even as to single women, the Census Bureau statistics, the most recent ones I could find, 1978, say that single men are earning $11,100 and single women are earning $9,300.
Yes, I love the word single that is used. When I did my study, I didn't use single, I used never married. You see, a woman who is single at age 40, having spent 10 or 20 years raising children, is really not quite the same as a man of age 40 who's been working continuously for 20 years.
And the differential she cited is not that great, so it could easily be accounted for by the
Yes, because when I break them down the other way, I did this for the academic world, and there I found the women who are never married, which is the term the way I take it, there they were earning more than the men. And similarly, when the government did data some years ago on women who had been working continuously since high school into their 30s, there you found that they were making slightly more than men of the same description. So the difference is between married women and everybody else.
What's so funny?
I highly recommend that you buy that book. Okay, it'll explain a whole heap of economic
Society, Ayn Rand, and Thomas Sowell. Woohoo! None of them have any statistics.
Really? Thomas Sowell doesn't have any statistics.
None of them. I've given
Thomas Sowell at the Hoover Institute in California, San Francisco, has no statistics.
Men earn roughly 80% the hour wages of white college-educated men. So
that
again,
doesn't prove that they're earning less in the same position.
You guys don't care because you believe so heavily that Thomas Sowell is the greatest thing since sliced bread, even though even in his own words, he's stating that, oh, well, this woman who's 20, who's only worked a couple of years, but has all these kids, isn't getting paid the same as this single man who's,
Jacoby,
dad with the kid.
Something, Jacoby, those of us that have
actually changing the statistics, doing exactly what you're talking about, manipulating statistics to make it sound better.
Those of us that have actually studied the issue,
can actually look at. Those of you who have studied are the same people at the Economic Policy Institute. You are not there. Those of you who have studied are the same statistic guys that I have posted. You have said nothing.
Those of us that have studied these issues and looked for causes have come up with different reasons for this. Other than systemic racism.
Blah blah blah. Give me proof.
If it's systemic racism, then why would that be the same?
Give me your statistics. If you want to talk about systemic racism and how, for example, you're trying to ignore the fact that it exists. That's part of the systemic racism. The redlining, the fact that
the global phenomenon comes down to what happened in America. Interesting.
Nope.
I'll have to remind people in other countries about that.
We were talking about.
You heard what I said.
You brought up Thomas Sowell.
There are causal issues
who made up some fake statistics that you believe because hey, you love Thomas Sowell.
Yeah. Okay. Good on you, Jacoby. Well done.
But again, you've not disputed or brought any information to prove me wrong, and I brought facts to you. The only thing you stated to me is that this person at McDonald's. You
obviously don't know the difference between average wages and median wages and disparities. You obviously don't know the difference, and you don't want to hear it because you've already made up your mind that it's systemic racism, and you're going to lecture me about you are going to lecture me on how to
the only thing you've given me was, hey, this guy at McDonald's is always paid the same as this guy at McDonald's.
All right, mate.
That is nothing.
On that note, we're going to have to wrap up. I've actually got Sasha going, but we can continue this debate later on. I definitely think that there are institutions, and we've talked about before, whether it's prisons or banks, that may have systematic and all along those lines, but we can get into a whole debate and a whole show. And like I said, I would love to bring Sandy Darity and some other people that are more economically adapt than myself. But I will admit to things that I am not adept at and all along those lines. So I will bring them on to share their perspective, because they would have a better perspective than I would and be able to give you more concrete answers and figures, because I will also admit that that's what I love doing at this show. Is I get to learn, and I get to learn from both sides of things as well. So I've learned a lot from Shaquille, you, Lee, and Jadovi. But on that note, we're going to get on out of here, and we'll continue these.
See you guys tomorrow.
Maybe tomorrow, because I don't think we have a guest tomorrow, but Steve may be with us tomorrow as well. But we'll definitely continue the conversation. And right now, they're talking about Russia, Ukraine, and China on the other side, and all in that space. So you're going to get on out of here. It's been another lively discussion, and we'll continue again on tomorrow as well.